When World War II ended on the 2nd of May 1945, Berlin was a city of almost total destruction. 70% of the buildings were either totally or partially destroyed, food was scarce, and fuel for cooking and heating practically non-existent. But the Berliners left alive were determined to restore their city, and with the generous help of the American, British, and French occupying powers, reconstruction made remarkable progress. In the Russian-occupied sector of Berlin and in East Germany, the opposite was true. So much so that the dismal lifestyle and the heavy-handed East German puppet regime that was set up by the Soviets caused a flood of refugees from the East to the West. Many of these were the skilled technicians and the professionals the East simply couldn't afford to lose. This, plus political bickering among the former Allies, led to the Berlin blockade, the Soviets sealing off the main highway and rail arteries that brought the food and the fuel Berlin needed to survive. The American response was swift, and the Berlin airlift was born. For 11 months, an endless train of planes landed and took off every few minutes, bringing in the essentials to permit Berlin to survive. Even today, the airlift is considered an unparalleled feat in the history of air transport. Admitting defeat, the Soviets called off the blockade. The political and economic situation in East Berlin continued to deteriorate. Arrests by the communist secret police only made the population more rebellious, and every day thousands of persons escaped from communism. On June 17th, the now famous protest strikes and riots took place, only ending when Soviet tanks and troops moved in. By 1961, a quarter of the population of East Berlin and the Soviet-occupied sections of East Germany had fled the country. To stop this, the Eastern authorities started the construction of the infamous Berlin Wall. Only partially effective in the beginning, many were able to escape simply by climbing over or through the fence or jumping out of windows on houses bordering the west. But over the years, the system was improved, and today, escape is extremely difficult thanks to an elaborate system of guard towers, vicious dogs, minefields, death strips, and guards with shoot-to-kill orders, rewards for those who do kill an escapee, and punishment for those who don't. But people do escape using ingenious methods. This balloon that perhaps you saw in the recent Walt Disney movie was one successful method. Other refugees came over hidden in special compartments of small cars, while still others used diving apparatus to swim under the waters on the border. Over the years, more than 100 people have lost their lives trying to escape, and within the past 5 weeks, there have been 3 successful and 5 unsuccessful escape attempts. Join me the rest of this week on the 11 p.m. news as I continue to explore Berlin's past and present. I'll visit a young American teaching dance in Berlin, a strange interlude on the Kurfürstendamm, and we'll look in at a typical beer bar that hasn't changed a bit since Commander Pug Henry's time in Berlin. The first Allied troops entered Berlin in May 1945, and it was expected it would take about 10 years before the reins of government could be returned to the Germans and the occupying powers could withdraw. But almost 40 years later, Berlin is still an occupied city, and unless the international situation will change dramatically in the years ahead, several more generations of American, British, and French troops could serve in Berlin. Today in Berlin, there are 6,000 American troops plus another 6,000 dependents and civilians. And while part of the American presence in Berlin is to show the flag, they have a definite combat mission in the event of hostilities. I was very impressed by the American troops I saw and talked with in Berlin. Not a pleasant job, especially for those patrolling the border between East and West in the open jeeps, but they know why they're out there.
You really feel that you have an important mission to accomplish, and every day we come out here, you can see the threat up close. And it gives it a real importance to the mission and makes you feel like you are performing an important mission.
Berlin also has a large non-official community, Americans living and working in Berlin in a wide variety of tasks and occupations. Nikki Weiss is the daughter of an American diplomat. She was born in Berlin 28 years ago when her father was stationed there. I might add, her father was the man I worked for in my younger days. She came back to Berlin 10 years ago and now has her own dance studio. I asked her, why Berlin? What's the attraction?
I think it's a very international city. There are a lot of influences from all over the world. That's what I like.
I also asked her plans for coming back to America.
I was planning to go within 1 or 2 years. It may be a little bit shorter now. I'd like to go back and get settled there.
live in America,
Yes,
leave Berlin forever.
I think so. I think I've been here long enough.
We read a lot about German protests against the American presence in their country, especially among the young people. I asked a number of young people how they felt about this in Berlin, where if the Americans leave, the East Germans and the Russians will certainly move in. Without exception, all said they wanted the Americans to remain. Tomorrow, as we continue our Berlin adventure, a look at historic Berlin, a lake in the middle of the city with 40,000 boats, Berlin's version of Rodeo Drive, and a historic Berlin restaurant which has been serving ham hocks for 80 years and still going strong.